Welcome to Betrayal Trauma Recovery. I'm Anne. It's summer, and I remember being so excited, thinking my marriage would improve as we spent quality time together on that road trip, our family reunion. If you end up having the same experience I did, where vacations left me feeling more hopeless and scared, because I found out on one of those trips that my husband was using explicit material and lying to me about it. We're here for you every day, all summer long. You don't have to schedule an appointment or wait. You can hop on one of our daily group sessions from anywhere. We're an empathetic team of betrayal trauma professionals, and we can help you right away. Our daily group session support is the safest space for women to focus on their healing without fear of being traumatized by a therapist or clergy who might seem to think that you're part of the problem. You're not, and you're not alone. If you're ready to join a community of women who truly understand, check out our group session schedule at btr.org/group. We'd love to see you today. And if this podcast has been helpful to you, subscribing and leaving a 5-star review is the best way to help other women find it. Follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Together we can reach every woman who needs to hear this. Exploitative material isn't entertainment. It's the commercialization of women's bodies. It's harmful to everyone. So if your husband is on the phone all the time, it's important to know that what he's doing on his phone really matters. Because if he's using exploitative materials on his phone, there are real implications for his actions. Apart from when he's on the phone so much that he's ignoring you or dismissing you or not helping with the family, it's possible that there's more than meets the eye. His attitudes and choices may be emotional abuse. There are actually 19 different types of emotional abuse tactics, and to find out if he's using any of these tactics, you can take our free emotional abuse test at help.btr.org. I have Laila Mickelwait on today's episode. She has been on the podcast before talking about her nonprofit, Justice Defense Fund, and how they are taking on the pornography industry and their exploitative behavior. Welcome, Laila.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
And I appreciate you. You've done so much in such a short amount of time. I'm hopeful that this episode will bring more awareness for women to really understand the possible implications if their husband is on the phone all the time using this exploitative material. So let's start with your new book called Takedown.
Yes, so excited to finally have that out after years of writing. The reason I wanted to write this book was to get the truth about Pornhub and its parent company that has a monopoly on the global porn industry, the truth about what has happened to so many victims on the public record, to educate people, to activate them, inspire them, and ultimately get more people informed and engaged in the fight for justice, not only against Pornhub and MindGeek, recently named ILO, to try to distance themselves from their toxic image, but to really want to help take down and, most important, to prevent illegal content from being distributed on user-generated porn sites. So that's why I wrote the book, and 100% of all the proceeds from the sale of the book go to the Justice Defense Fund to help this cause, the fight for justice, to hold mega abusers accountable and to really bring needed closure and restitution to victims. So that's the purpose. You can go to takedownbook.com, and there you can purchase the book at really any major online retailer. It's published by Penguin Random House, so you can find audiobook or ebook or hardcover. You can find it in Canada, in the UK, and Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. And it's being translated into Chinese as well. But yeah, takedownbook.com. And there you can also sign the petition. 2.3 million people have signed the petition to shut down Pornhub and hold its executives accountable from every country in the world. It's not only children who've been exploited, whose lives have been completely shattered because of the distribution of their trauma on Pornhub and its sister sites, but also adult victims, victims who have been raped and trafficked, but also victims who have consensually recorded videos and then had it non-consensually distributed, which is very traumatic for them.
Yeah, it is. We have women in our community who have had that happen to them, and it has been horrific. Then they find out their husband was on the phone all the time, seeing if these non-consensual videos were getting the views on YouTube. It's awful.
Yes, and we know that according to surveys, victims of what we call image-based sexual abuse have almost a 50% rate of suicidal ideation. So it's very traumatizing. What happens is when the videos get uploaded, it becomes the immortalization of trauma where they get downloaded and then uploaded again and again. And they understand that this will be happening in perpetuity for the rest of their lives. They can't escape it. And so this is horrific. And it was happening en masse on Pornhub, the world's most popular and most trafficked porn site, when the fight began at the beginning of 2020. Just for context, at the beginning of 2020, Pornhub was the largest and most popular porn site. But by the end of 2020, after the coronavirus pandemic was in full swing, they had actually become the fifth most trafficked website. So, fifth most visited website across the entire internet. They had 170 million visits per day, 62 billion visits per year, and enough content uploaded that every year, every 12 months, it would take 169 years to watch if you put those videos back to back. Owned by a parent company called MindGeek, who, with a $362 million loan, had rolled up the porn industry, owning most of the world's most popular porn sites and brands, especially the tube sites like Pornhub. So, what I discovered at the beginning of February 2020, this is about 15 years in the fight against sex trafficking, and I'm paying attention to the headlines. I'm looking and investigating the porn industry and its ties to sex trafficking and abuse. And I see some really concerning headlines. The end of 2019, one of them was a 15-year-old girl who was missing for a year, and she was finally found when her distraught mother was tipped off by a Pornhub user that he recognized her daughter on the site, and she was being raped in 58 videos that were being sold for profit on Pornhub. And then the Sunday Times had done an investigation, and they had found dozens of videos that were illegal within minutes, even children as young as 3. And then at the same time, like I said, not just children, but also adults, where there was a woman named Nicole Armando from New York, and she was being tortured and she was being raped by her partner. And he was filming the abuse and uploading it to Pornhub, and she ended up killing him in self-defense, but then got sentenced to life in prison, separated from her 2 young children. And these just horrifying headlines that were
Wow.
happening, yeah, at the end of 2019. And as an advocate against sexual abuse and trafficking, of course, these arrested my attention. And I had a haunting question that came to mind. And that was, how in the world did this abuse end up on Pornhub? And then I discovered, by testing the upload system, what millions of people already knew. And that was all it took to upload. And this is the reason why the site became infested with illegal content, was because, for multiple reasons, but the primary reason was that they were allowing the unlimited upload of user generated. So anyone with an iPhone could film a sex video anywhere in the world and upload it. And all they were requiring was an email address. So they were not checking an ID to make sure that this is not a child or an underage teen or tween in the video. They were not checking consent to make sure that this is not a rape or trafficking victim. Literally in under 10 minutes, anybody could just upload a sex video to the site. And because of that, the site actually had become infested with videos of real sexual crime. And that is how all of this began, this fight to hold them accountable for what has happened now that has destroyed so many victims' lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Like, you didn't turn away, you went toward it. And that is like so brave. Your work and the way that you have helped women all over the world cannot be underestimated. So thank you.
I would just say thank you to everybody who's been part of this movement, because it certainly hasn't been a one woman fight. I took to Twitter using the hashtag TraffickingHub after I made that discovery. But it was really because of everybody who cared, everybody who saw the injustice and didn't look away, who shared, who signed, who even took to the streets week after week with signs protesting in front of the MindGeek headquarters in Montreal and LA and London and South Africa and all over the world. People who really joined this fight in a meaningful way, of the hundreds of survivors who came forward to powerfully tell their stories and raise their voices, even though they were being attacked. And to the journalists and the lawmakers and the lawyers, so many people who came together to take on this behemoth of abuse. So from where I sit, I am so grateful to many people who listen to this very podcast, who have signed the petition, who've been part of this. And without all of us coming together, this definitely wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, it is exciting. That's how we feel about the work we do here. At Betrayal Trauma Recovery, we're educating women about what to look for and building a community of support through our daily group sessions, but also on our Instagram and our YouTube channel. We reach women, especially if they're like, why is my husband on the phone all the time? Something feels off. So, our focus is helping women feel safe and make progress toward a peaceful life within their own home. But in terms of your work, can you share the progress that's been made since we talked last?
Yes, huge strides. We still have a ways to go. The fight's not over, but the story that is told in the book Takedown, I wrote it in first person, present tense, where you start on that night that I described when I tested the upload system and made this discovery and this realization that the site was what I call a crime scene, not a porn site, a crime scene. Launched the Trafficking Hub hashtag, launched the petition that started to go viral. Thousands of media articles are being written. Survivors are coming forward on a daily basis. Whistleblowers from the company are coming forward and sharing internal documents and all of the ways that this company operates that has intentionally, as a policy, enabled the global distribution and monetization of sexual crime and peeling back the onion layers of complicity of Pornhub and its owners. And what happened was we fought the credit card companies so hard for years. And finally, in 2022, they've cut Pornhub off once and for all. Discover MasterCard, Visa, join PayPal, and cutting all ties with the site. And in a panic to try to woo the credit card companies back, because this was the worst thing that could have ever happened to Pornhub, because every decision is driven by one consideration. That's profit. What will make them the most profit? The worst thing that could have happened to them was to lose the credit card companies. And in the last 4.5 years, they have been forced to take down 91% of the entire website. They went from 56 million pieces of content in 2020 to 5.2 million today. I think the most meaningful part of this takedown of content, which Financial Times has called what happened, thanks to the participation of so many people who've been part of this. Financial Times called this probably the biggest takedown of content in internet history, because these were unverified videos, meaning they had no idea if they were children, if they were teens, if they were victims of rape, trafficking, image-based sexual abuse. They had no clue. And so many of them were criminal content. And so they were forced to take down that much of the site. The CEO and the COO were forced to resign. The secret majority shareholder of the company, who had been hiding his identity from the public for years, was found, and he was exposed and located. And today he's being sued by dozens of victims. Today, nearly 300 victims are suing Pornhub and its parent company in 25 lawsuits, including multiple certified class actions on behalf of tens of thousands of child victims. And they have been criminally charged by the US federal government for intentionally profiting from sex trafficking and sold as a distressed asset to a disgustingly named private equity firm that was hastily concocted, and they named themselves Ethical Capital Partners. But this is what's happened so far. And we're hoping to see full justice, meaning victims are provided the restitution, that we see full criminal prosecution. Ultimately, we'd like to see Pornhub shut down completely, to send a message to others, that not only to bring justice to victims, but to send a message to anyone who would operate like them, that this impunity, this exploitation for profit will just not be tolerated. And hopefully that can deter future abusers. And then as a result of all of this, what we really want to see, we want to see age and consent verification policies for all user-generated porn sites to prevent this from happening in the future. But they've refused to do it for so many years. They set up the business model to profit from unrestricted amounts of content, because the way that they make money on the site is by selling advertising impressions. So on Pornhub alone, they were selling 4.6 billion ad impressions on the site every single day. And in order to sell that many ad impressions on the site, they have to have massive amounts of traffic coming to the site. And in order to have massive amounts of traffic, they have to have inventory to show up in Google to drive those results. So they have to have so much content in order to drive that traffic. And so they don't want to limit content. They don't want any friction in uploading. They want it free for all, upload whatever you want. They didn't really care what was being uploaded. They just wanted sex videos, which actually were crime scene videos. So that's why they resisted for so long until even September of 2024. After all of this happened, they finally said, and we'll have to see what's going to happen if they're actually going to do it properly, but they said they're going to start to verify the ID of the individuals in new videos that are uploaded to the site. But they still have to account for 5 million videos that were uploaded without verifying who's in them and whether they consented to that being uploaded. So we're demanding the rest of it come down.
Wow. Sorry, it's so intense that anyone could be educated about this even a little bit and say that money is more important than a victim's emotional, psychological, sexual safety is insane. It's insane. It's like shocking. The final step in this true crime story is holding the founders legally and financially accountable so that others don't replicate this business model. And then I have a follow-up question, which is what about the new buyers?
Ethical capital partners, yeah, the new owners. One of the things that's so important in this fight, and I'm so proud of the survivors who have courageously come forward to personally sue by name, not just the corporation, but the individual owners. And I'll just share the story of one particular survivor that has just led the charge on doing this. And her name's Serena, and she was a innocent 14-year-old from Bakersfield, California, who had videos of her sexual abuse uploaded to Pornhub again and again. They had a download button on every video so that anybody could possess on their devices these videos and then upload them again and again to the internet. And she would beg Pornhub to take these videos down. And if they would even answer her, most of the time they would ignore her, she said. But then if they would answer, they would hassle her to prove that she was a victim, prove that she was underage in the videos. And even if she could get them down, they would just go up again. And this sent her on a spiral of trauma and despair. And she dropped out of school because she was being bullied. She got addicted to drugs to numb the pain. She tried to kill herself multiple times and then wound up homeless, living out of a car. But today, Serena has told her story. Not only that, but she has sued Pornhub, its owners, individually, the CEO, the COO, the secret majority shareholder that was exposed. Not only that, she's suing Visa for their participation in all of this, for their processing of her criminal abuse. And she's suing the hedge funds that gave the money to MindGeek to have their business in the first place. Colbeck Capital, Redwood Capital, and dozens of survivors are doing the same, suing the individual owners. I think that is so important. It sends a message to those who make the decisions. You can't hide behind a corporate veil. You can't just shield yourself with a corporation. That these decisions that you enact, because at the end of the day, these are policies that come from the top, that they will be personally responsible for that. And I think when that happens, it will create a huge deterrent effect where the owners of these companies will be afraid to make those same decisions because they will know that they are not immune from accountability. So I think that is so important. And with the new owners, they've called themselves ethical capital in an attempt to try to distance themselves and whitewash history, but truth cannot be forgotten. And they could name themselves something else and maybe try to get people to forget, but the victims will never forget what happened to them. They'll live with that for the rest of their lives. And they're currently fighting for justice, even against the new owners. And one thing that's really disturbing to know is that the new face of Pornhub is a man named Solomon Friedman, who he's a criminal defense attorney and has spent his career defending criminals. Time magazine reported he has had significant experience defending pedo criminals and those who are sexual abusers. He is wanting to do the same for Pornhub. However, we're going to keep fighting to make sure the truth is told. And even to this day, like I said, there's unverified content on the site. And there are illegal videos still on Pornhub, even after all of this happened. So we're just going to keep sharing the truth.
Yeah. With the credit card companies cutting off people's ability to use credit cards on these sites, are people using crypto now?
Yes, they're able to use crypto, so they can still transact, unfortunately. Pornhub, when it was sold to the new owners, was sold as a distressed asset because they have lost the credit card companies. But yes, they still can transact using crypto.
It just goes more and more criminal, more underground. I'm not going to make the argument that it going underground is going to be good for it, right? Less people are going to use it.
It's true. It's just so interesting you said that because that's what I hear from victims themselves. They say the most traumatizing part of having these videos distributed is the fact that they're distributed on the surface web where Google crawls. Some of these victims have had their names attached to the videos, their school name, their town where they can be found by just anybody. So when they go to the grocery store, they're standing in line wondering who has seen my rape video because it is on the mainstream, most popular porn site in the world, accessible to anyone. And like you said, even accessible to children, which is so horrifying to consider that any child that has the ability to click a few buttons on a device could end up on the homepage of Pornhub, where there have been criminal videos, even on the homepage of Pornhub itself, side by side by real rape videos. And having a child be exposed to that trauma as their introduction to sexuality, as their sex education is so frightening.
It's sexual abuse.
It is sexual abuse. It's a form of sexual abuse. I talk about the need to protect children on both sides of the screen from viewing this content, also
Yes.
being in the content. And I'm so encouraged by this wave of momentum that we've seen recently, where states are starting to pass age verification laws for users. It's interesting because Pornhub has aggressively opposed age verification for users, and they have actually shut themselves down in states that have enacted age verification or made them liable when a child views their site. So in some cases, states have said parents could sue the company for not having age verification in place. And in that case, they've shut themselves down because they don't want to lose the money. They don't want to pay. And we even have the senior community manager of Pornhub on the record saying what the real reason is. They cite like privacy concerns. This is a privacy, this is a free speech issue, when the senior community manager said this costs us money and that it would basically be devastating to their revenue. And so that just goes to show it's like in every case, putting profit before the safety of people. And in this case, the safety of children, not to have to witness a crime. Crazy.
I think Utah passed that.
Yeah, there's a number of states. Alabama did, Texas. It's actually going to the Supreme Court because in Texas, they passed the law and then Pornhub refused to comply. They were sued by the state of Texas. Then they countersued to stop the law from being enacted. They lost and then they appealed and then they lost and now they're protesting it. So it was a free speech coalition. Pornhub was one of the plaintiffs in the case to appeal. And then it's going to be heard at the Supreme Court. I think the date is January 15. And so they're going to consider whether this is constitutional to be able to enact age verification for users of porn sites.
Any senators or anyone consistently voting against these type of bills?
I don't have anyone in particular that is voting against these types of bills. What I've seen is mostly unanimous support from both sides, bipartisan support, because really the ones that are opposed to this are the porn industry because it costs them money, it costs them traffic, and the financial incentive there is to oppose it. But anybody who has common sense, who cares about the safety of children, doesn't want children to be accessing these sites. And some people say we need device level verification, where that would be Apple, for example, that would instill in the device itself safety for children not to be able to access adult sites. And then some people say, no, it should be at the website level. And I'm saying it should be both. Like when we are trying to implement safety when we're driving a car, you have a seat belt and you have a roll bar and you have an airbag and you have various ways that you can protect. And I think in this case, it's both and. It's yes, do device level verification for kids to protect them, but then also require porn sites to have third party age verification for users of those sites.
I'm interested to see who starts citing free speech issues and not voting for this, if there is anybody. Hopefully it will be unanimous, but if there is, I would really like to call them out and have people know that this is the person who voted against this. Because,
Yeah.
like, oh, here's somebody who likes pedophiles. I'm interested to see like how that shakes out.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so there's the age verification laws that we need to see for those who are accessing the videos, and then there's the age verification we need for those who are in the videos. And it seems like there's even less opposition to those age verification for those who are in the videos than the user side, because some people are saying, "Oh, I don't wanna give over identifying information to be able to access a porn site. It's my right to be able to access a porn site without having to do that," which to me just isn't really a great argument because people give over identifying information to shop on Amazon, to use PayPal, to go on Airbnb, to do a
Yeah, but
lot of
they don't
things.
care if people know that they bought something on Amazon, where if people know that they're using porn. For women who listen to this podcast, their husbands don't want their wives to know that they're using
Yeah.
porn. These types of exploitative men think it's their right that nobody knows, that they should be able to access this without their wife knowing, because if their wife knows, then she might be like, I'm not into this. And he really wants to maintain power and control in his own home by controlling the narrative of who he is and what his character is. So he really does not want his wife to find out.
Well, then I think those who oppose it, they need to be clear and just be honest and say, it's not that I care about my privacy generally. This is not a speech issue. This is, I don't want anyone to know that I'm going to Pornhub. It's not generally a privacy issue. It's a privacy about this issue.
Totally. But men with an exploitative character will never tell the truth. They'll never say, I want to be able to lie to my wife and live a double life. So I'm going to vote against this bill. They will never say that. So they'll always cite free speech and they don't want government intervention, or I don't know what they'll say, but they'll never say, I want to be able to lie to my wife about who I am. I'm just talking about the man who would claim free speech stuff. Like, it's not free speech to rape a child. So, no.
That's actually true because when you're talking about free speech is assuming that these sites are distributing legal content, where we know that a lot of the content that is being distributed, because we have figures, we have victims, we have cases, we have evidence that a significant portion of what is on these user generated porn sites that are free for children to access is illegal content, which is contraband. It is not an idea and expression. It's not any form of legal material. There's no protection for that kind of content to be distributed. I think that's why it's really important to make sure that we are talking about the reality of these sites, because people, perhaps judges and those who are considering these cases, might have this idea that this is Playboy, right? That this is the content you might have seen 50 years ago or 20 years ago. But with the advent of user generated content and unrestricted uploads, so much of it is actually criminal content. That's really important for them to consider what is the material that is being distributed on these sites. And children definitely need to be protected from viewing, but adult victims and children need to be protected from being used. And they've had a law in place in the US since 1988 called USC 2257, which has traditionally governed the brick and mortar porn industry. We think about Porn Valley in LA and the way that studios had produced porn. And this required them to do age verification and record keeping. And in fact, the Department of Justice at any time could call for the inspection of those documents. And if they didn't have them, it was actually a criminal offense. However, now with this new model of free porn, user generated porn distribution, they've just completely gone around that important regulation. And so we need to update our laws.
Do you know of any victim who has used material on Pornhub as proof in her own sexual assault case? Not to sue Pornhub, but criminally to charge her rapist or someone who coerced her?
Yes, and it's not her, the case that I'm gonna cite right now. I mean, there are other cases of hers, but this is a him. There was a case of a 12-year-old boy from Alabama that was drugged, overpowered, and raped by a man named Rocky Shea Franklin. and he filmed the abuse, and he uploaded 23 of those videos to Pornhub using titles that indicated that this was abuse of a child, and they were sold on Pornhub and a profit sharing relationship with the site. And police located the devices. When they went on the devices, they found he had uploaded them to Pornhub, and they saw the videos on the site. They documented them as evidence that they used against him were the videos that he uploaded to Pornhub of the victim. And he's in prison for 40 years. So, yes, that has definitely happened in more than one instance where the evidence of the crime were the videos.
I wonder if more victims could do that. I know of at least a handful of women in our community who have had videos of them uploaded by their husbands, like the woman that you talked about at the beginning of this episode, and they didn't know about it.
There has been a recent case that has sent shockwaves around the world where people are just so horrified, but also so inspired by her bravery in how she's holding her husband accountable. Her name's Giselle Pellicot, and she's in France. She's over 70 years old
I
now.
did see this. It's amazing.
Yeah, I can't believe how brave she is. And I completely understand when victims want to be Jane Does because I 100% understand that. So, not to say that those who are out there as Jane Does are not courageous because they are, but Giselle is out there in this public trial. She demanded that it be a public trial, and her husband had actually drugged her. And when she was unconscious, he would recruit men to come and rape her, and he would film it. And the police actually gathered, I think it's thousands of videos that he had taken where he was recruiting these different men from the community. And these are men from the community, lawyers, policemen, doctors, whatever, not just like guys who are just in their basements, like you would imagine would do this, but guys who were answering these ads that he was putting out to come and rape his wife as she was unconscious. So anyway, she's having a public trial, and yeah, the evidence of the crime is there. It's actually the abuse that he recorded. And one of the things she insisted, which was shocking to a lot of people, was to have the court actually play some of those videos so that she could shame. Her idea was to put the shame of what happened on the abuser and not the victim. So they could sit there and they could be ashamed seeing what they did in front of the court, which was like, wow, like people were just like, can't believe she did that. But in the course of this story going public, and getting so much viral traction around the world where people are so inspired by her story. We've actually had at the Justice Defense Fund people coming forward saying that this happened to them, where their husbands or their partners had drugged them unconscious, raped them, and then they later found evidence either on their devices or on websites or porn sites where the videos were uploaded and were able to find those. But this is horrifying that this is not a one off case. This is actually happening.
I've talked with many sex trafficking experts, and the most likely person to sex traffic you is your boyfriend, right? Or even maybe your husband. And men who are intent on sex trafficking, they groom you from the very beginning. Many women end up marrying their sex trafficker. They don't know that's what has happened to them. They don't realize that she was targeted from the very beginning. That is a known method of sex traffickers to be the boyfriend and then groom and then sometimes marry them, but they're still a sex trafficker. Even if your perception is that they are your husband, to them, they've always been intent on trafficking you.
Yep. They call it the lover boy method of sex trafficking. And it is common. It is used all the time. I don't know if anyone has heard the powerful story of Annie Lobert, and she was in the situation where she believed that she loved this person that was her abuser. It's a powerful story. It does happen quite often, and they use that as a tactic and a method and prey on that vulnerability. And it's horrible. But yes, it's a lot of times familial, someone you know, and that you're supposed to trust.
There might be a woman listening today, and she is currently experiencing this. If that's the case, what would you say to her?
They can go to the Justice Defense Fund website, justicedefensefund.org, and there is an intake form there where you can fill out a couple questions, and you don't have to talk in detail at all about what happened to you, but just it's basically a find help form. And then you'll be connected with a trauma informed, licensed representative who's an advocate at the Justice Defense Fund who can then connect with you and hear your story and then help with whatever the next steps might be from there. But yes, you can go to JDF's website, justicedefensefund.org.
Thank you so much for your amazing work. I appreciate you so much.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me on and for this conversation. And I hope we can stay in touch.
If this podcast is helpful to you, follow or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app to help other women find it. You can also subscribe to this podcast on YouTube. While you're there, comment, give it a 5-star rating. That'll help bump us up in the algorithm. Thank you to those of you who have subscribed on YouTube or other places and commented and given us 5-star reviews, because that's the #1 way to get the word out to other women about this. If you've already purchased a copy of my book, Trauma Mama Husband Drama, from Amazon, please circle back and give it a 5-star rating. A lot of women are searching for books to figure out what to do about their husband, and rating Trauma Mama on Amazon will help them find this podcast, which is free to everyone. And of course, your generous donations keep this podcast going. Go to btr.org, scroll to the bottom, and click on Support the Podcast. And until next week, stay safe out there.